Hey everybody, I hope you're doing okay. So I wanted to put out a video real quick just to kind of give you an update on everything. So if you remember, I've been posting these videos on these cathedrals, the way that they were laid out like man, and this goes all the way back into ancient history, just like I showed you that you see right here, just like you see in the temple of Luxor. I've shown you how the head is equivalent to the winged disc, and the winged disc is associated to Orion. That you'll find all this covered in my Assyrian Tree of Life videos, parts 1 and 2. I go into a lot of detail about that. Part of the purpose of that was to show you that it doesn't matter where you go back into ancient history, you start to see the same themes popping up. This Assyrian Tree of Life is not just found in Assyria, it's found in Samaria, it's found in all of these different locations. That's the reason you have so many different versions of exactly the same thing. That's the reason you see all these different versions of the same winged disc that they're showing you. And the reason all these ancient temples were designed after man, all this stuff hasn't stopped. It's just that people have become they've become where they're not aware of it anymore. Now, I would say probably in very recent history you don't see it anymore. I think that the people that were designing the cathedrals, or the people that were signing off on them, I think that they've become aware of it and they don't allow that kind of stuff anymore. That's the reason you heard the Knights Templars saying, I don't know how these guys got away with it, but they did, right? But the rule applies if you go all the way up into Gothic and even into the Baroque period, around the period of I would say between 1500 and 1750, somewhere around there. That's when you get people like Bernini, that's when you get people like Michelangelo, and the art that they did was not only what you saw as far as the way the cathedrals were built, but they were also telling a much more esoteric story, and the same one that we see dating all the way back to ancient Egypt. The reason those pyramids were placed where they were on the Nile and the Nile Delta were to point us to Orion for a specific reason. Even the Nile and the Nile Delta itself, the way the Egyptians speak of it in the Book of Coming Forth by Day, they speak of it like a temple. And it makes a lot of sense because the Nile Delta is actually the head of that temple, and we'll go over that in another video, but that actually is the image of something that we are all so very familiar with at this point. Now, these particular cathedral videos that I've made recently have caused my channel to get attacked. This usually happens when I start putting out information like this and coming at something from a different angle. I usually get these morons like Bill, Occult Science 101, and apparently I've grabbed a new one, this guy named Realms, or whatever you want to call him. But that doesn't really matter. I've already shown how these guys are complete morons. And you know, they find these friends of theirs to come thumb the videos down many times. And look, guys, if you want to do that, please come ahead and go ahead and do it. You know, find 100 friends of yours and, you know, have them come all thumb it down. I don't care. It makes no difference to me. That's not going to stop the truth from getting out. It's also not going to stop my book from getting written. So if you want to come thumb my video down, you go right ahead, because eventually the whole world's going to find out about all this. I've taken very good measures to make sure that this is going to happen. One of the things I wanted to show you about these cathedrals I think is really interesting. I never noticed before. You guys probably might have, but I never noticed it. Is when I started looking at the floor plans of these things, something really interesting. I've always noticed that, see, this is where the head area is, and this is where the pelvis area is. But you'll always notice that north is facing this way. So east is where the head is. I find that really interesting because, you know, these guys, like for instance, we can go to another one, for example, and take a look. There's another one. They're all over the place. They all have north pointing in the same direction. Here's one. North pointing in the same direction again. I'm just trying to look for them with compasses. Now look at this. Somebody noticed the same thing I did right here. This is bibliotechlopades.net. Don't really like that. I don't really like that website that much, but at least they've got the right idea going on here. This is what the cathedrals are doing. So what's really interesting is east is always where the head is, and so they're doing that for a particular reason. Here's when we've got north. Looks like north is kind of pointed in the same direction. Here's another one. North pointed in this direction, east is where the head is. So you can see that they're doing this pretty much the same way on all these cathedrals. Now I find this interesting because they're doing it for a particular reason. They're not just doing it because of the lighting, that they want the lighting to be in a certain place. I think it has something to do with something a little esoteric as well. You know, if we take a look at Matthew 24:27, it says, "For as lightning that comes from the east is visible even in the west, so will be the coming of the Son of Man." And I think that when they do these cathedral floor plans, here's another one right here, north, east is where the head is again. So, and I think it's really interesting we have lightning here because that's the way that the Kabbalah and has described that it actually recurs as a lightning flash moving from Kether here and then zigzagging down the tree of life. This is the way that the Kabbalah describes everything. So I find it interesting that the floor plans are like that. Now, the next one I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be showing you the Church of the Jesu. It's going to be a rather longer one because there's a lot of sacred geometry in there, but the end result is the same. Now what you see in these cathedrals here is you see, let's just pull up a standard one here. This area right here is called the nave, and right up here in this area is called the apse. This is where the altar is, and this right here is where I guess if you were to lay the body on top of it, somewhere around the belly button area is where the nave would be. And I don't want to do a play on words thing, but I think it's kind of interesting that nave and navel seems to be kind of the same area, but I don't think it has any kind of a relationship. But if we lay the human body on top of this, when we look inside, and this is a floor plan of the Church of the Jesu. This nave area right here is where we're first going to get a glimpse of the Orion Nebula. It's on the ceiling, okay? But it's showing it to us from a distance, as if we're looking at it from the distance, because we see the whole Orion constellation circling into the Orion Nebula in the middle. And interestingly, as we approach the head of the church, when we get up to right here, there is a painting by Giovanni Battista Galli called Glory of the Mystical Lamb that's painted all over this dome right here. And in this particular case, we get a very close-up of the Orion Nebula trapezium, which is actually the head. So in all these various cathedrals, we're seeing the same thing, Orion Nebula in the head. And even if we go all the way back to ancient art, we see the same thing. We see that the Orion Nebula is the head, it is the winged disk. And we can see this confirmed from Sumerian seals, where they show us the 3 stars of Orion, and they place the winged disk right where the Orion Nebula is. And we can see it in the image of Orion and everything. So the same theme has been applied, and it's been found all over history. And now it's being found in the cathedrals, because the cathedrals are laid out as man, and the Orion Nebula is right in the head again. And that's what I'm trying to show you, that all of these things that I've been pointing out to you, they all are confirming each other from many, many different angles. People do not like this, or some people do, and that's the reason my channel is getting attacked by these morons. There's no telling who these people are, but it was very obvious by the last cathedral that I put up with the Chapel of Versailles that they were not too happy that I was putting out this information. It's not going to stop me, and if they want to invite 100 or 200 friends to go thumbs down the videos, be my guest. It's not going to stop the truth from getting out there. Anyways, I just wanted to give you guys a status update. I'll be working on this next with you. We're going to take a look at some sacred geometry, and the sacred geometry kind of helps us lock in what we're looking at. And I'm going to show you kind of how we do that, and how we can actually see the sacred geometry of the Orion constellation itself by mixing it or finding out what the art piece is actually doing. So anyways, stay tuned, and you guys have a good night, and I'll talk to you soon.